Again, give people a second to catch up. Sorry we've had you standing in the sun for so long. At least you get a little shade here. So, buried in this lovely marble mausoleum behind me is a lady named Mary McCormick, alias Sarah Henrietta, alias Sarah McCormick, alias Mary Green, alias Mary Wilson, alias Mary Taylor, also known as Leah Dool, and known sort of colloquially as Crazy Mary around town, due to her particular and kind of eccentric behavior. She really led an interesting life, if you couldn't already tell by all those names that she has. We know she was married at least 3 times, and also was in several common law relationships. I'm not sure why that's noted, because the state of California, at least today, doesn't recognize common law marriage. So anyway, I don't know. But also a very shrewd businesswoman on top of all that. After her death, which happened in 1872, the court actually began to investigate her and her identity. And up to that point, as I said, she'd existed under all those different names, and also in different states, and even in different countries. And so no one really knew what her complete story was. And there's a whole lot of conflicting testimonies and a really foggy backstory that we don't really have time to get into all the details, but I'll give you a lot of them. The basic facts are that she reached California in 1849 or 50-ish, around the gold rush. She stopped in San Francisco and then established herself here in Sacramento as Leah Dool. She also made use of the name McCormick and built a house here in Sacramento, which was then called the McCormick House. She soon became associated with the local proprietor here named Charlie Green, who ran a stagecoach line here in Sacramento, and is supposedly thought to have married him. She explained the use of her name Mary by saying that was the thing that was bestowed upon her when she entered the Catholic Church. We do know also that she, as well as a brother and sister, all spent times at different points in their lives living here in Sacramento, California. Her brother, C.C. Brown, is also buried here in this mausoleum. And during his lifetime, he was a businessman and an auctioneer himself. During their earlier days, Mary and her sister Fanny were arrested several times for being what was called soiled doves at that point. I can explain further. We've got kids. You want me to explain further what I mean by soiled doves? Do you get it?
We got it.
All right. Okay. Clearly, however, the crazy apple didn't really fall far from that crazy tree, because in 1852, her also very interesting sister, Fanny, that I just mentioned, was arrested for killing a man in El Dorado, in an El Dorado saloon, because he refused to buy her wine. Whether through her business connections or her marriages, she amassed a lot of money, actually, and also a lot of property. She ran a boarding house and also had involvement in several other legitimate businesses here in Sacramento. Less legitimately, she was also a bit of a slumlord. She also was a moneylender, and as I said, property owner, so she rented a bunch of little houses to different people. Charlie Green, that person that she supposedly married, died, and Henrietta married another gentleman named David Taylor, who also was worked in the streetcar industry. He was a conductor. And then shortly after that marriage, she divorced that guy, also married yet another guy called Ezra Wilson, who was a deputy sheriff here in Sacramento. She was interesting in that she was both a Catholic and also an ardent spiritualist, which meant that she believed in Jesus and believed in ghosts at the same time. And, although she said that they weren't actually a conflicting belief structure. She often repeated accusations that doctors and Masons and other Catholics, other people in groups she was a part of, were all in collusion with her husband to try to poison her and to steal all of her money and all of her property. This was probably not true. People remarked that she kind of finally completely went off that deep end when her son John died. He had been away at a Catholic college at the time and had gotten into some money trouble, and he basically drunk himself to death. She was convinced that he had actually been poisoned by someone there at that school, and so she spent a large sum constructing this mausoleum originally meant for her son to be buried here. And it was, in 1869 money, this was built at the cost of about $18,000. So maybe $500,000 in today's money, something like that. let's see, she kicked out her hubby after she heard that her son had died. She said that in kicking out her hubby, she said that, well, he beat me. He's the reason why I have tuberculosis and lung problems, because of him beating me. Also, those spirits that she believed in so ardently told her that he was being unfaithful, and that was another mark against him. She had a crackpot of a spiritualist friend named Mrs. Tuttle, who at this time also suggested that both of them should live on a diet of cheese and brandy alone, and that would cure the problem. Didn't cure the problem. She was arrested at one point for running around Charlie the Crocker mansion downtown, basically in an evening gown, and was taken away to the Stockton Insane Asylum at that point. The coup de grace came just shortly before her death in 1872. Her doctor arrived to check on her one morning and found her just stark raving mad with a pistol in her hand, crying out for her son. And she had, obviously both over-medicated and drunk more than was probably recommended also. It is interesting, however, that the doctor's reports do legitimately say that the doctor legitimately prescribed, quote, some whiskey to go with her morphine. When the chief of police arrived, who's the doctor, said, this lady's got a gun, she wants to kill me. The police arrived, and she proceeded to show them eggs, produce, other things in her kitchen that she was sure were poisoned, and was insisting that the police take down to the fledgling forensics department to ascertain if there were actually poison in them. The police didn't really have the facilities to accommodate that request, and really didn't accommodate that request. Ultimately, she passed of tuberculosis on December 9th of 1872. And in keeping with that maniac personality, that manic personality with all the marriages and all the houses and all the other things, she changed her will on multiple occasions leading up to her passing. She made an original will on July 5th, 1871, then amended it in 1872, on June 22nd, 72, again on July 1st, 1872, and a third time on December 6th, 1872, which was again just 3 days before her ultimate passing. She was buried with all the pomp and circumstance that her money could buy her. She had a procession of 10 carriages that she had paid for. After passing, most of her property went to settle the debts that she'd accrued building this vault and other things. She left her house and other property to her brother, with certain conditions that he had to abide by. What else do I have here? She left the running of, she also owned a hotel, I forgot to mention that, into which she left to her ex-husband Taylor, with the codicil, which is an amendment to the will, that basically he would lose that gravy train if he was to be found living with another woman or getting remarried or anything like that. I suspect they didn't try to enforce that. And then another interesting chapter, I was told, actually by Megan, we've mentioned the person in charge of the grounds here, was that quite a while after everybody had been laid to rest here, someone, I guess, had fessed up to stealing remains from this particular monument. And the thief had moved back east, and when he died, those remains had been passed on to his child, who was appropriately gacked out at having dead people parts in his house. And so he basically contacted the city cemetery here to have them returned to where they should be. They were subject to DNA tests, and we actually were not able to figure out if they did belong here or not, although we appreciated him returning them. Because of the solid door here, and, well, I think there's actually, I think the inscription is, I think, around the back side of the monument, but there's a poem that she wrote, which is really lovely. It doesn't really sound like the words of an irrational person to me. Her poem says, "Who will come to weep above us, lying, oh, so white and still underneath the skies of summer, when all the nature's pulses thrill to new life, glad and tender, full of beauty rich and sweet, and the world is clad in splendor that the years shall e'er repeat? Who will know of white hands lying on a still and silent breast, never more to know of sighing, evermore to know of rest? Who will care? No one can tell us, but if rest and peace befall, will it matter if they miss us, or miss us? Not at all."
That was nice. So how old was she when she died?
Let's see, she died in December 1872. I don't know if we actually have her birth date, to be honest with you. And she was probably in her 50s or 60s, I think.